Hello, I'm Caroline Cabrera, Director of Education for Miami. The Greenhouse Teachers Lab is brought to you by Miami. These modules aim to provide teachers with creative writing strategies supported by a trauma-informed lens. Through projects, events, and publishing, we create a platform for amplifying Miami's people, investing in a new, shared narrative of our city and a more equitable picture of its future. We believe that art and self-expression should be equally available to every Miamian. In this module, poet and teaching artist Arsimmer McCoy and board-certified art therapist Deanna Barton give some practical guidance for using creative writing to navigate challenging topics in the classroom.
Hi, Arsimmer.
Hi, Deanna.
I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Me too.
As we explore some really challenging topics and hopefully make teachers a little bit more confident with bringing this content into their classroom.
Absolutely.
So teachers, we're also really excited to have you here today as we explore how writers share personal and traumatic lived experiences. And Arsimmer, I know you're going to share a really awesome writing exercise that can assist students with approaching writing and discussing these really challenging subject matters.
Thank you, Deanna. So the poem that we'll be using for this exercise is Martín Espada's The Meaning of the Shovel. This poem explores the lived experiences of people who have migrated, the asylum seekers, the refugee, the immigrant. Our classrooms are composed of students from all over, from diverse backgrounds. Oftentimes, these students are looking for solidarity and camaraderie in navigating new spaces, unfamiliar cultures, and customs. And so this poem explores those nuances through Espada's lens.
Excited to hear this poem.
Absolutely. And so this is an excerpt from the poem, The Meaning of the Shovel. I dig because I have hauled garbage and pumped gas and cut paper and sold encyclopedias door to door. I dig, until the passport in my back pocket saturates with dirt. Because here I work for nothing and everything.
This is an extremely powerful poem. Yes. And I imagine there's a lot of ways that teachers and students can dive deeper into the language, into the words.
Absolutely. Espada uses personification to shed light on the objectification of the working class. He plays in these two spaces in order to highlight how even in a place where you have moved to, think that you have found asylum or freedom, you are still not seen. You still have to work to reclaim your identity. And so he uses the shovel, a tool that you would think you only use, when you need it. He's saying I'm more than that, that I am a tool that is the most powerful and yet seen as lesser than the other tools in the toolbox. Mm-hmm. Teachers, when you're discussing this poem with your students, talk about how personification and also how objectification plays out in the real world. Talk about advertisements. Talk about things we see in magazines. How gender roles, societal roles play in objectification, how we can talk about those things through storytelling. Personification is also a tool that's been used in storytelling for centuries. In African culture, Anansi, the spider, tells stories about what you can do, what you can't do, a talking spider that warns you against, dangers of the world, but also helps you to understand how to navigate the world. And so, teachers, know that you can pull from many resources to explain objectification and also how personification plays in those two spaces.
I feel like I'm learning a lot, especially as a visual artist and an art therapist. I never really imagined how deep writing can go, how deep we can get into exploring poetry in this way. So I really appreciate you sharing what you're sharing in this time.
Poetry is an amazing vehicle. It is a vehicle that is the muse to so many different things. As the painter is the muse to the poet is the muse to the musician, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so, teachers, after you've explored the poem, now it's time to get into the class activity.
The fun part.
Mm-hmm, the fun part. And so, We're going to be exploring, as I said before, the interrelation between objectification and personification. You're going to ask your students to write a personification poem where they turn object to flesh or flesh to object. And there's two ways you can go about this. You can have students sit in the classroom. You can have them look around the classroom and identify the inanimate objects that are around them. What are the pros of those objects? Why are they so important? Why are they in the classroom? Have the students list these things or call them out. An alternative is to have students go outside and look at non-human things in the landscape. Birds, planes, grass. What are the pros of these things? Why do they exist? Why are they here? Have them list those things as well or call them out. Once the students have identified this, you can have them list them and then use them for the creation of their poem. It's almost like giving them a word bank that they can pull from. Also, encourage the students to come up with their own rhyme scheme. There is not one way to write a poem. So really encourage them to dig deep into how they want to tell their story, and always have students speak in their voice. Let them know that their voice matters just as it is. I have an example of a poem here from one of my students who took this very workshop. Ife wrote about turning into a tree, and this poem is called Mother Tree. She walks her head held high, arms out, embracing the sun. Skin is bark, armor from the pain. Feet are now roots, so she knows how to get home. A beautiful poem. Ife empowers herself, empowers her voice and her lineage by turning herself into a strong, beautiful, mighty tree. I was so excited when she turned this poem in from the workshop because it let us know that she understood that if she was to be anything in this world, it is powerful, it is strong, and it is giving.
I think this exercise is really beautiful and important, especially when we're thinking about bringing this into a classroom where students may have experienced something really traumatic. And often in those times, they may feel powerless, they may feel unseen or unheard. And so in many ways, this exercise is inviting them to reclaim their experience or rewrite that narrative, which is extremely important for further processing their experiences and feeling like they can share that with others in the classroom environment.
And there is no limit to this activity. All children can benefit from having these conversations, not just for themselves, but also in speaking to their peers and navigating the lived experiences of the students that they go to school with every day.
This is a really amazing exercise, Arsimmer, and I think there's so many benefits to incorporating this into the classroom. So to begin to wrap us up for today, I do want to share some best practices and also encourage you as the teacher to facilitate this exercise from a trauma-informed perspective. And so first and foremost, as I'm sure you've heard in many of the other modules, the importance of grounding the students. Since we're talking about such challenging subject matters, we encourage you to begin with a grounding exercise and maybe even end with a grounding exercise to ensure that our students' nervous systems remain calm and also end in a calm space and state. It's also important as the teacher to be in a regulated and calm state, and this is tapping into the power of mirror neurons. This really speaks to our brain and our body's ability to perceive someone else's state of being or their feeling state. So if you are in a calm and regulated state, your students are more likely to be in a calm and regulated state.
Absolutely.
We also want to point out the importance of centering cultural humility, which is a little bit different than cultural competency, where some may feel they can simply read a chapter in a book or watch a documentary and know all there's to know about another's experiences. Cultural humility really asks us to honor all lived experiences and to remember that culture is complex and evolves and changes over time. It's okay if you don't understand everything that your students are going through. We can also note that power imbalances and social injustices are affecting our students every single day. And so this exercise is also opening up an opportunity for you and your students to explore those things and to begin to consider how we can dismantle social injustice. Cultural humility is also a lifelong process, so we invite you to go to a place of self-examination, to take some time to reflect on your own power and privilege, your own belief systems and values, and really understand how those things can affect the students in your classroom. We also encourage you to make time and space for the conversations that arise from Arsimmer's exercise. And remember that these conversations may not happen in other places. Your classroom may be the only space and time students have to really dive into exploring their lived experiences. And through that exploration, students are able to be vulnerable, and we are really strengthening those connections between students and also between teachers and students. And so whether you decide to bring in your entire classroom for these discussions, or maybe we even break them into smaller groups to dive deeper, or we might even offer them prompts that can lead to more personal and self-reflective processes where they journal, or maybe they even make art, which I know is important to our work as visual artists. And so just remembering that all of this together is strengthening those connections between you and your students and also the peers themselves. We are really tapping into community resilience, which is vitally important.
Absolutely. And also, teachers, feel free to collapse vehicles into each other. These vehicles being music, art, language, dance. I love to bring in postcards to my classroom and photos and have students use them as the grounding writing experience. Also, if you have students that may be a little fidgety, maybe it's hard for them to focus, bring in clay, small pieces of clay where they can build while thinking and writing. Small things that they can put on the table, healthy snacks that they can snack on while writing and talking. All of these things can help to make your classroom into a sanctuary for students that may not have another place to do this elsewhere.
I love how you're bringing in the power of the expressive arts and honoring how all these things can help our students. So thank you so much for sharing your exercise and presenting such a beautiful poem. I think there's so much potential here and ways that teachers can incorporate that into their classroom. And teachers, we hope that you feel more confident bringing these subject matters and discussing and writing about challenging topics with your students.
Thank you, Deanna, for having me. Have fun with this.